away Black voters from President Biden towards a third party independent candidate such as Cornel West or Robert F. Kennedy as a part of his math for 2024. And independent presidential candidate John or Robert, that is Robert F. Kennedy, said today that New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers and ex-pro wrestler and former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura are among his preferred running mates. The Uvalde, Texas police chief announced today that he was resigning. Now, this comes days after a city council report cleared several officers of wrongdoing in the delayed law enforcement response to the shooting at Robb Elementary School that ended in the deaths of 19 children and 2 teachers. Steve Bannon, the one-time advisor to Donald Trump, suggested on Saturday that the former president was paid off after he shifted his position on TikTok. The seeming shift in stance from Trump came after a meeting with a conservative hedge fund manager who has a $33 billion stake in TikTok. Now, previously, Donald Trump joined with other Republicans and stated that TikTok should be banned from the U.S. But after this meeting with this billionaire hedge fund manager, he says he has had a change of heart. Now, this manager has threatened to pull support, and that is financial support, from GOP lawmakers who back any bill to divest TikTok or to limit its use in the U.S. And Representative Ken Buck of Colorado, a Republican who frequently defied his own party and announced last fall that he would not seek re-election, he said today that he's going to resign from Congress at the end of this week. And this is going to further shrink the GOP's already razor-thin majority. His departure will cut the House Republican margin to 218 to 213. Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington all held primaries today for the Republican candidate, Donald Trump. He is ousting Nikki Haley, who pretty much resigned or withdrew from the contest, although her name is still on the ballot in these states. And that is Joe Biden has crossed the threshold, and he will be the presidential nominee for the Democrats in the general election in 2024. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we dig a little deeper, where we go behind the headlines, and we bring you those stories that people are talking about. You all know I'm a civil rights attorney, and I've been heavily involved in 2 really big reparations cases, and just overall the reparations movement that, according to some, is having a moment. Well, you really can't think about reparations and what was taken from African Americans during slavery and after slavery without talking about farmers and farmland. I've had multiple shows over the last couple of years interviewing and talking to farmers, both male and female, families, fathers and daughters, fathers and sons, about how difficult it is for Black farmers to receive some of the federal aid that other farmers have more readily available access to, and just what has happened to Black farmland. We know today approximately 90% of the land that Black farmers had just a few decades after the end of slavery is no longer in Black hands. And to accentuate this point and really tell the story of what happened to Black farmers, there's a new documentary out. It's called Gaining Ground. It's already won a ton of awards and has gotten tremendously high praise from viewers and film critics. Gaining Ground, the fight for Black land, is made by Emmy-nominated director Eternal Polk, that is. And Mr. Polk in this really riveting documentary examines the causes, effects, and what is being done to fight the exportation of laws and how landowners are being treated, African Americans in particular, and how they are fighting back, how they are reclaiming their agricultural legacy. Eternal Polk is joining us in this hour, and also Michael Robinson. He is a landowner, a farmer himself, also a philanthropist, been heavily involved in this, what I'll call Black farmers movement. So when we come forward, we're going to sit down and talk with Eternal Polk and Michael Robinson about this riveting, really highly acclaimed documentary, and also the farm movement, what's happening around Black farmers all across this country. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Real time. You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
Tax Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. This tax season, you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a Samsung Galaxy A14 included when you buy an extended silver unlimited plan. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah!
Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at straighttalk.com. For network management practices, visit straighttalk.com. Device offer ends 4/14/24. Online only. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the silver unlimited plan. Taxes and fees
My
apply.
mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
We are back, and in this hour, we are talking about the award-winning film that's getting really high praise. The name of the film is Gaining Ground, The Fight for Black Land, and it's from Emmy-nominated director Eternal Polk, and it features a farmer whose family has owned farm property for decades, Michael Robinson. Michael Robinson and Eternal Polk are joining me. Thank you. Welcome to both of you. And thank you for the work that you are both doing on this issue. It's an issue that's near and dear to me as a civil rights attorney. I want to start with you, Michael. Tell us about your family's history with owning farmland and some of the struggles that you have faced in trying to retain that land.
Hi, Areva. This is Michael Robinson. Thank you so much for having us on and an opportunity to share our story. My grandfather purchased a little bit over 130 acres of land in central Alabama back in 1941. So that land's been in the family now for more than 80 years. And it was primarily the way that he took care of his family. I had 14 aunts and uncles. My mother was one of 15. So with a family that size, he had his own built-in farm hands, if you will. They basically farmed and provided all of the meat and vegetables and sustenance that they needed, and actually was able to take care of the family and provide the resources, the money that they needed to survive as well. So it's an honor that it's been in the family that long. We nearly lost it back about 12 years ago, and it was a struggle really to maintain that land. We've been through a long, drawn-out legal battle, but I'm proud to say, as of today, the family is the sole owner of the land again, and we're working to protect it so that we won't have to go through this issue again.
So, Michael, tell me the legal battle. What was the nature of the legal battle? Who was suing who?
So one of my distant relatives sold their interest in the land. If you're familiar with heirs property, land becomes fractionalized. And anyone that owns an interest in that land can sell it. They can, threaten to buy it or sell it to anyone. And so they were approached by an outside land speculator who reached out to two of my cousins and made an offer to buy their interest in the land. And under the law in place in Alabama at that time, it gave him the legal right to force the family to sell the rest of the land to him. So it was a shock to the family that, first of all, someone had actually sold their interest in the land. And second of all, that the law at that time actually allowed someone to force the family to sue. And so we were the recipient of a lawsuit by the land speculator telling us that he intended to force the sale of the entire parcel of land.
Wow. Eternal, let me ask you, how did you get interested in the issue of Black farmers and what happened to farmers coming out of slavery?
Well, initially, during the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation about, what was going on, especially in the summer of 2020, and re-examining and having a racial reckoning. At that time, coincidentally, I was in a group thread with a group of men, and a couple of them were farmers. And one of them had mentioned how they had around 400 acres in their family since the late 1800s. And I was shocked because of the amount of land and the time frame for which they had it. And from that moment on, I started pitching ideas about talking about Black farmers and just sort of doing profiles or whatever kind of way I could bring attention to it in 2020, when all of the companies and brands were coming to marketing folks and agencies to asking what to do. I was pitching this idea, and no one bought it, but a year later, a former colleague of mine, Denise Hurst Green, who's at Albrook Entertainment, has spoken to me about this project that they were working on, about Black farmers and heirs property. And the minute I heard about it, I was like low key campaigning. They had another director, and I kept saying, "Hey, how's everything going with that project?" So about 5 months, like every other week, she would hear from me. We were working on another project, and I kept asking about this one. And then finally, I got a phone call, and it was to ask me if I was interested in doing this film. And that was the joke, because she knew that I was definitely interested in doing the film, because I had been in her ear for about 5 months.
So let me ask you this, Eternal. The film that this production company was already thinking about and perhaps working on, was it the same as what you were planning based on your conversations with these men, or did you have to pivot and make an adjustment based on what the production company wanted to see, out of the film they were working on?
Well, I was working with a marketing agency, so we were doing a lot of work with BET at the time, and so everybody was coming to BET, and those were more like 30-second to 3-minute pieces, possibly, if we can get them to sign on. This was a full-length feature documentary.
Okay.
And so when I did come on, it really was my vision, and I kudos to Outwork Entertainment at John Deere, because they really were like, what's your vision? And I shared what my vision for the story was. And from there, they were like, okay, go get the story. So it was my research and my understanding of some of these issues already that kind of informed the story that I wanted to tell.
And so John Deere is one of the producers, right?
Yes.
And John Deere, is that the John Deere, like the tractor company, John Deere?
Yeah, that's the one in the same. One in the same John Deere. Yes.
So help us understand how, obviously they sell equipment, right, to farmers. What was their interest in telling the story of how Black farmers have been exploited in this country? And I would suspect, I don't know, the company itself may have some involvement in that.
Well, interestingly enough, John Deere had established, the same time in 2020 when everyone was trying to figure out what they were going to do, they did establish this program called the LEAP Coalition. And LEAP Coalition was this gathering of different entities that were already doing the work in the area with kind of being supported in ways that only John Deere could support this coalition. LEAP stands for Legislate, Educate, Advocate, and Production Systems. And so what they did was they talked to the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, and eventually the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. And through that coalition, they have been helping landowners get good title to their land, clear the title. In some instances, it's mediation with the family. So they already had this program up and running when my colleague Denise Green saw an article or a report on the program, and then she reached out to them and said, "Hey, I think you have a story on your hands here," and that's kind of how it came to be.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this, Michael. Did you know Eternal, or were you a part of this chat group that he talked about that involved some men who were farmers, or did your story, be made aware to him after he came on board as producer?
We're cousins. I just want to jump in there and say we're cousins.
Yes, he's my brother from another mother. Eternal was phenomenal. He came out and spent some time with our family, obviously, and just got a chance to really become a member of the family. And so I was actually involved with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. They're one of the organizations that I reached out to when I was hitting the end of the road, just trying to find some resources and an attorney that I felt was really fighting for our interest in keeping the land. One of the challenges we ran into being in the South was finding an attorney that we felt had the same passion for us as a Black family to fight for our land. And I didn't feel like the attorney that my family had hired was that person. So I did some research. I heard about the brothers in the Carolinas who I think were featured in the documentary Silver Dollar Road, who lost their land and actually had to go to jail. And so when I reached out to the organization that was helping them, they said, you may want to contact the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. I called them. The attorney at the Federation actually gave me some information that I shared with our attorney that helped us get the case dismissed. And it took away the threat of the lawsuit. And so I knew then that I'd found a partner that I could trust that was worthy of working with us to help us keep our family's land. And so they made the connection and put me in touch with Eternal when John Deere was actually funding the Federation. And they made an agreement that they were helping us to fight for our land. And that's how he and I got connected.
So, Michael, is the land being farmed now? And if so, is it being farmed by your family members, or do you lease the land out? Like, what's the status of the land in your family?
So we've used the land for a gathering place, and it was just paying homage to our grandparents. And so we didn't really farm it. It probably wasn't being farmed consistently since the mid to late 80s. Mm-hmm. And so there's a family home on the land. This current generation is now starting to farm. There's probably 15 or 20 acres that are in active rotation where they're planting some crops. They're baling hay. And so we're starting to put some active farming back on the farm. But we are really looking at all ways to maximize the value of the land. And some of that is simply getting enrolled in some USDA programs. There's so many different ways that we can maximize the land rather than using it just for the sentimental value that we've always attached to it. And so we are starting to explore actively farming the land, but it hasn't been an active farm for a number of years.
Right. Thank you for that. So, Eternal, I know that, as you said, after George Floyd was murdered, we were in this period in this country, racial reckoning conversations happening, big companies making huge commitments to projects like this, books, films, you name it, there were commitments for it. But we saw a reversal of that pretty quickly. By December of 2020, we started to see a lot of that money that was pledged and a lot of those commitments start to go away. As we saw this kind of backlash, did you experience any issues with this film, that might have been really interesting to a lot of folks in that racial reckoning period, but, did it become less of a priority as we, saw all of the ways in which this country was trying to set us back?
Well, I just want to add, there's one organization that I did mention. It was the National Black Growers Council, and they were a very important key member of that coalition. But no, actually, I'll be honest with you. I had the same idea of who John Deere Company was that most everybody had. If you haven't interacted with John Deere or bought some equipment from them, you would think like, hey man, why would they jump into this fight? And I asked the same question. And it was because there were people inside, and this is why representation matters. There were people inside who actually had this issue, and there were people who were higher up. There were people who could advocate for this particular this program and also advocate for this film. But from the inception of the idea of the film until now, John Deere's commitment has been steady, and it's been I think it's kind of unrivaled because they have a program that's when this film is forgotten about. I don't think it ever will be, but when this film is forgotten about and in the Criterion collection, that program still exists. And it's still helping families and the organizations, and that's what's important. And this is why we highlight those organizations in the film, because if you go to the website for the film, the most active part of the website are the resources, the organizations that we highlight, because that's what people need and that's what people want, is the information and the support and the resources. So it has been consistent, and they have been right behind it in promoting the film and getting the film out there. We did 18 festivals, and if you've done a festival circuit, that could get somewhat expensive, and so they've been right there along the way, making sure that we were in communities that were affected by this and people who are affected by this. And so there has been no fall off in from my experience.
That's fantastic to hear. I hear too many stories where folks were involved in projects or had commitments for projects and then saw those commitments dissipate. So I'm glad to hear that John Deere made a commitment and is following that commitment through. Mike, let me ask you about the response. So I would imagine even maybe some of your family members and friends didn't know the story of your family. What kind of responses have you gotten as people have gotten to see the film and learn more about your family's history?
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing, even down to so many people telling me they're dealing with the exact same thing, that they own land that their family owned for years and it wasn't in a will. And so now it's owned by multiple generations. And so they would like to hear, and they see this film as a roadmap. Our family got really engaged. We formed committees. When we saw that we were at a threat of losing this land, it really galvanized the family. It woke up a sleeping lion, because we'd always placed, again, more sentimental value on the land. But when someone who was an outsider got an interest and was threatening to sue to take the entire plot of land, that was our wake-up call. And so many other families have said to me that that film has helped them because they now understand there are resources. There's a roadmap that they can follow in order to protect their land as well.
Can I?
We
Can
are
I?
talking.
Can I?
Hold that thought for me,
Okay.
Eternal. Hold that thought for me. We're talking about Gaining Ground: The Fight for Black Land from Emmy-nominated director Eternal Polk. More on this fascinating film and the story of Black farmers in America. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
The right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Tyreek Wynn. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Dolly Parton thinks a cover of one of her most famous songs could be on Beyonce's country album. Country music icon told Knox News she believes that Beyonce has recorded a version of Jolene for Act 2. Parton says she's very excited about it and she loves Beyonce. She added that she's always been touched by Beyonce and her mother are fans of hers. The Giants made a major splash on the first day of legal tampering in the NFL. According to ESPN, the G-men are acquiring pass rusher Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers and signing him to a $150 million contract. Burns will be guaranteed $87.75 million, making him the second highest paid defensive end in NFL history. The Panthers are receiving a 2024 second round and a 2025 fifth round pick. The teams are also swapping fifth round picks in the 2024 draft. That's the latest. I'm Tyreek Wynn on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Elysian Park on the 110 North at the 5 Sound. That's a stalled vehicle taking up the 2 left lanes. Traffic is deadlocked from Martin Luther King Boulevard in Hollywood. 101 Sound between Sunset Boulevard and Mission Road. Expect some patchy traffic delays there. In Orange County, Bray at 57 South after Imperial Highway. That's a stalled vehicle moved to the right shoulder. And then Anaheim 91 westbound at East Street and Raymond Avenue. A crash blocking the 2 right lanes is going to have you on the brakes from Imperial Highway.
Why settle for ordinary when you can have extraordinary hair? Visit your local SoCal FS Cut and Color Salon today and let their team of expert stylists pamper you with affordable luxury. Get a free shampoo with every cut. Book your appointment today at fantasticsands.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Former Crenshaw High School baseball legend Darryl Strawberry is celebrating his 62nd birthday today in a hospital. Strawberry is recovering from a heart attack he suffered on Monday. Doctors at St. Joseph Hospital in Lake St. Louis, Missouri, said Strawberry is in good condition. He's expected to remain under observation at the hospital for a couple of days. Strawberry was an 8-time All-Star in the major leagues, 7 with the New York Mets and 1 season with the Yankees. The Mets are retiring Strawberry's number 18 jersey in a ceremony at New York Shea Stadium on June 1st. Free agent running back Austin Eckler is moving on from the Chargers. Eckler signed a 2-year deal worth $11 million with Magic Johnson's Washington Commanders. Over the past 3 seasons, Eckler scored 44 touchdowns, the most by any NFL running back. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you missed any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes, why should we be silent? Turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment.
LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back and we're talking about Black farmers and a new documentary called Gaining Ground, the Fight for Black Land. And just a few decades after the end of enslavement, African Americans were able to amass millions of acres of farmland. But today, approximately 90% of that land is no longer in the hands of Black folks. Now, there are various reasons why Black people and Black farmers in particular no longer own the amount of land that they did coming out of slavery. And some of those reasons have to do with violence. They have to do with eminent domain, discrimination. And this law, it's called heirs property. Basically, what it means is somebody owns a piece of land. It gets passed down from generation to generation. And oftentimes, and definitely in the times we're talking about, the transfer of that land was poorly documented, and it allows for someone to come in and basically can force the sale of that land if they're able to acquire even a small portion. So that's been another way that developers in some cases have forced Black folks to relinquish their land. And lots of this isn't known. Most folks don't know that Black folks had so much land, so much farmland. So I'll ask you, Eternal Polk, the director of the film, is here, and Michael Robinson, one of the families that's featured in the film. Eternal, what kind of response did you get from people? Because I know when I talk about Black farmers, I often have people send me a DM or a text or something and say, wow, I didn't know that Black people own so much farmland and cannot believe what has happened to that land. So what kind of responses have you been getting from the documentary?
Well, they vary depending on who is in the audience. Now, a lot of people who come to the screenings or the festivals have this issue in their family, or they know someone. So for a lot of people, it's not just like, hey, I'm a moviegoer and hey, I just like films. That's a segment. But a lot of the audience are people who have this issue or dealing with it. So their response is like, thank you. And I think what for a lot of people, and I think, Michael can probably attest to this, is that, when you're going through this, you feel like you're alone. And if you don't know a community of other farmers or landowners, you probably think, man, no one knows about this, so I can't get any publicity to help me out or any support that you kind of get when an issue like this is you're confronted with. And so that segment of the audience is really like grateful and thankful. And then another segment of the audience who are like film goers, so like, it's beautiful. And I didn't know about this issue. And that's the most common thing. If you aren't dealing with this issue, most people were like, I didn't know about this. And wow, I need to make a phone call to my family to find out what's going on with our land, or to, because everyone kind of has that story, like, I heard we had land, and then it's like something that's kind of talked about at the family reunion and no one like knows for sure. And then, but this kind of compels people when they find out not only what you can do with the land, but how it's been taken. A lot of people start to get active and call and find out what's going on with theirs. But overall, well, I'll just tell you, I looked it up on IMDb. I'm that guy. I had to find out. And it got an 8.5. So I think outside of everything else, it's getting a good response in all sort of aspects of it: the filmmaking, the storytelling, and highlighting the issue.
And you just described different audiences. Obviously, those, like you said, who have land in their family and are looking for ways to claim their own land. Those folks who don't know about this issue. But what about talk to me about the age group and racial breakdown? This, is it appealing more to younger people, older people? Is it more Black? Is it more white? Like, who's in that audience?
Well, there's a cross section, definitely, because there is a movement among younger folk, to sort of, go back to the South, to sort of reclaim that, part of our life. There are a lot of people, such as myself. I was in New York for 27 years, but my parents are from the South. My father's from Tennessee, my mother from Louisiana, and I had my best time being in, quote unquote, the country. And I think a lot of people are understanding that. And that's one of the things, one of the aspects of the film that I brought up. And it's not just about the land and about the money, but it was also the spiritual connection and the healing that comes from being in rural spaces and in the woods and in the mountains and things of that nature. So, I think it was really important for me to not only talk about this issue, but also talk about what's surrounding this issue, and whether you have a farm or you just have land that's in your family, like the Eli family. It's funny because in the film, Michael says, when they're trying to figure out who would want the land, and then there's a shot in the film and it looks so beautiful, and I'll say to myself, who wouldn't want this land? Like, it's beautiful. It's set way back. You have to really be intentionally trying to get there. There's waterfront, there's a river that runs right adjacent to the property. They got some other magical elements, which I won't say. He knows what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say, because I'm just waiting for them to do it. But it's a beautiful piece of property. So if you were, one of those speculators, developers, you automatically look at this and say, this is like gold here. And so that's what people are starting to understand, is that the land is tied and connected to our legacy, not only our financial legacy and not only our familial legacy, but our spiritual legacy.
Did you know, Michael, did you have any sense about the fact that Black people coming out of slavery owned, so many millions and millions of acres of farmland? It's amazing to me. Like I said, when I do these stories, how many people say they had no idea that there were Black farmers? Did you and your family have a sense of that? And if not, this process, I'm sure, gave you all a much bigger sense about that.
Absolutely. Not to that extent. So I was always familiar with Black farmers because our family's farm was surrounded by other Black farmers. They all owned their own parcels of land, and we knew those families intimately. My family and I lived about 2 hours, about an hour and a half from the farm. So I spent my summers there. And it was like Eternal said, it was magical, but it was in the middle of nowhere. And so we were shocked that someone outside of the family actually knew about the land and bought an interest in it. And we found out that when my grandfather bought the land in 1941, it was not as farmable because several of the acres ran along the Alabama River, and they would sometimes be, they would hold water and you really couldn't farm that. But you fast forward 83 years and the land has become so valuable because of its proximity to the river. It's a ideal spot for recreation. And recreational land has become, more valuable than farmland in some cases. So we understand now why that person bought the interest and what they were hoping to accomplish, but we were just shocked that he knew about it or, could buy an interest into the land.
Give us a sense of a magnitude, Michael, in terms of what your grandfather bought the land for in 1941 and what that land is valued at today.
He paid $2,500 for it in 1941.
Wow.
And so I've run like some inflation calculators, and it was probably equivalent to, I don't know, $15,000 or $20,000 at that time. But it was still, a significant investment for a Black man in Alabama to buy over 100 acres of land in 1941. So that was my back of the mind process. It's like, we don't want to lose this land on my watch. I don't want our family to say 15, 20 years from now, we used to own land in Alabama, what happened to it? And so my uncle asked me to personally get involved to help in this fight for the land. And that's when I got busy looking for resources and found the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, and they helped us. And the attorney that actually helped us secure the land told me recently that she went out and bought like 30 acres of her own. She said that she's been so moved by families' connection to the land and the value of the land that she felt like, hey, I'm helping these families fight to keep their land, and I don't have any of my own. So she recently became a landowner just through the work that she's doing.
So we know heirs property owners typically are considered tenants in common, which basically means that each fractional owner has equal rights to use the property, sell the entire estate. That's the problem with that concept of owning as tenants in common. And oftentimes there's not a will. The person who owns the land dies, what we call intestate, without a will. What happened in your grandfather's case? Did he have a will, and did he deed the property to your mother, your father, or anyone in particular in the family?
So my grandfather died of a heart attack in 1959 before I was even born. And his wife, my grandmother, was still alive. So she inherited the land. She died several years after him. And when she died, the land went to their 15 children. And so it was.
Right, but you're saying this like automatically, but I'm saying, were there wills and documents that made these transfers?
No, and if you think about rural Alabama in the 40s, there was probably a lack of trust around, or even a lack of resources. There's not many Black attorneys in Alabama in the 40s that you felt comfortable sitting down saying, I'd like to put a will in place or protect my land. And he may not even had the knowledge. I think it was more along the lines of, I own this land, I have the deed to it, and when I die, it'll stay in the family. Right. Not understanding that the formality of the land being split across multiple generations each time someone passed.
Yeah, and how complicated that becomes when you don't have a formal will and other documents to establish ownership. And in your case, having that cousin out there that made the decision to sell his or her piece. We got to talk about who that cousin is and if they're still invited to the barbecue. When we come forward, more with Eternal Polk and Michael Robinson. And the film is Gaining Ground, The Fight for Black Land. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You can earn one for free in as few as 5 months online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste, so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a whole lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and we are talking about the documentary Gaining Ground, The Fight for Black Land. It's from Emmy-nominated director Eternal Polk and Michael Robinson, a farm owner, I guess I should call him. He and his family own 100+ acres in Alabama, and he is featured in the documentary. So, Michael, I know that you just told us that your grandfather and grandmother and perhaps even those 15 children they had didn't document the land, didn't use a will as a vehicle through which to transfer the land. How has your family now secured the ownership of the land? And how have you all as a family thought about how you use this land to build generational wealth? Because when we have these conversations, one of the things that I know bothers me as a civil rights attorney and my friends who are economists is how the stripping away of Black land from Black people has contributed to this huge wealth gap that we see in this country, because we know that non-African Americans who were given an opportunity to own land, transfer that land, pass it down from generation to generation, have become in many cases multi-millionaires and very wealthy as a result of that. And we, in many cases, as Black folks, have been denied that opportunity.
Absolutely. So our family placed the land in LLC, a limited liability corporation. It's actually named after my grandparents to honor them. And we are really looking at any and all opportunities to maximize the value and monetize the value. I found out through the film and through this process that growing crops such as organic garlic has the ability to generate thousands of dollars per acre. And so we're looking at leasing land, farming the land. There's USDA programs that in some cases will pay landowners to simply leave the land in its natural state so that it becomes an attractor for bees and pollinators and butterflies. And so we are enrolled in a couple of USDA programs that we found out through our partnership with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And so there's so many different ways that the land can generate income to help sustain itself and the family. And so we're exploring that through this LLC that we recently established.
So, Eternal, I know folks are asking, how do I see this movie? You've told us all these wonderful things about it. Like, where can we find it? So talk to us about where folks can see the movie. If they, I don't know, if it's, you talked about different festivals that you've been at, and I know you said you've been to 18, but where else can folks view the film?
Well, okay, just quickly, Michael, look in the truffles. They're $250 a pound. So right now we have some private screenings happening. The festival run has ended, and I'm hoping the distribution gets worked out. I don't want to give a time frame because I don't want people to be disappointed, but hopefully let's say before the fall. But that's the goal. The goal is to get the distribution worked out, and I'm letting the people who are the more sort of knowledgeable about that handle that business. But I'm going to say soon, and hopefully sooner rather than later. But it is on its way out, and people will be able to access it soon.
Okay, and so the goal is it the goal to have it in theaters or to be on a streaming site, or what's the ultimate goal for you?
It I don't. It won't have a theatrical release, but it will be on one of the platforms. I'm definitely not sure of that. I'm not being I'm not being coy, but I'm definitely not sure. But I know it's not a theatrical release, but it will have a platform release.
Okay. And what ultimately, I know you said you've had people who come up to you or people that come to the film, when they've had an opportunity to see it at a screener and talk about how this has helped them think about land that their family owned and maybe motivated them to organize their family to investigate land that their family may have owned. But what's your ultimate goal for what this film does once it is released more broadly?
Well, it's interesting that I just got back from Dubai, and the film came up from a conversation I was having with someone from New Zealand, and they were talking about how land is an issue in New Zealand as well with the indigenous folks there. So it's an issue all over. It's a global issue. One, I want other people in other countries to see it so they can understand that it's not just a very localized American issue, but on a more sort of specific context. I want people to know the resources, that they're not alone, and that there is a movement out there of people who are willing to help. There's an organization like John Deere with the Leap Coalition and the organizations that they pulled together, so they know that they have support um, and some help to do this. Center for Heirs Property, which is in South Carolina, they are helping a lot of people. They have every week they have something going on to help people in this arena. But on a personal note, I feel like the disconnection from the land is a travesty from the standpoint of the healing properties of being in these spaces. Being on the Eli farm, it felt like we were in another world. We were in another time and place. And when you're out that far and you're on 100 acres of land, there is a safety that you feel that you've walked into a place where you know the people and you're safe. It's the same feeling I've felt when I was on Shirley Sherrod's property, New Communities, and Resora in South Georgia. You feel that there's a place where you as a Black person are safe. And I want people to have Black folks who have been told we should be in urban areas and we should be in cities and we should be all on top of each other, and that we should be afraid of the woods and afraid of these rural areas. I want that sort of notion to be tossed on its head and people to get the benefit. Folks, other folks that's not Black pay hundreds of dollars and sometimes thousands of dollars to go in the woods and to stay in cabins and to disconnect and to reconnect with nature and reconnect with themselves. And if we have got that sort of mental block that is just keeping us from our healing and from a spiritual connection and having this space to just breathe, then I want that to be reclaimed as well. I want that benefit and that beauty. And just if you look at the film, it's beautiful because the land is beautiful. And I want us to be able to not only appreciate that, but to experience it on a more consistent level. And I'll say this, the movement is to go back to the South. And I've done another project that deals with Black farmers. I met even more Black farmers in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, like all over Arkansas. There's more people than you think out there who are farmers who are going in, and also more people than you think that are going back to the South and getting involved in land ownership.
No, that's so right. And I love that you said one of the goals is to help African Americans in particular reconnect with nature and the woods. There are groups, there's some actual groups out there that take folks on, nature trails and nature walks, and it's all about getting back outdoors and enjoying the outdoors and appreciating the beauty in spaces like these farms. And I can imagine that they are tied to this movement in some ways, because they're younger people, people you wouldn't expect to be interested in farming, who are discovering farming not only to be economically viable, but again, as you said, to be a way to connect spiritually and to connect with family and to preserve these histories. That's what I think find so much beauty in these stories, is because it gives families an opportunity to come together and tell those oral histories that hopefully become memorialized and passed on from generation to generation. So thank you so much, Eternal, for the great work you're doing. Thank you, Michael, for being vulnerable and being willing to share your family story. Best of luck to both of you. I hope the film gets broad distribution real soon, and that everyone gets a chance to enjoy it and to see it. Again, thanks for spending some time with me right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Just over 3,000 passing yards to go with 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The vice president is set to visit South Florida next Saturday. Kamala Harris plans to visit